Good morning. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chetanamano Pishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Haryam Tatsat. Yesterday, we heard the last statement in the Pratama Prakasha concerning how to apply the angas of bhakti with discernment. So the main thing is we have to have a swabhishtam bhava. Swabhishta bhava means the bhava that is swabhishta, your desired bhava, one's own desired bhav. So following afterward in the Nitya Siddha Brijbasis. So based on that, there's swabhishta bhava, maya, sambandhi, anukula, viruddha, aviruddha, and viruddha. So those angas which are filled with the bhava, those angas which are having a relationship to one's desired bhava, those angas which are favorable to one's desired bhava, those which are neutral, and those which are unfavorable. So, and then we discussed what all those meant as best we could. We were doubling back because I forgot a whole little passage there. So luckily enough, the passage I forgot speaks to the unfavorable embrace, the embrace of angas of bhakti that are unfavorable to one's swabhishta bhava. So even though it's out of order, it's not going to be too confusing. Lucky us. Okay, so let's look at that passage here. So it says here, Raganuga sadhakas are herein advised to not practice ahangra upasana, considering oneself identical with the object of worship, nyasa, various elaborate practices for chanting mantras and performing archan, meditation on the moods of Dwarka or worship of Rukmini and the other queens of Dwarka, even though these are included in the limb of archana as mentioned in the tantras. It is understood from the scriptures that on the path of spontaneous devotion, there is no fault if some of the limbs of sadhana are not followed completely. In the conversation between Maharaj Nimi and the Navayogendra is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.235, it is said, Yan astaya narorajan, na pramadyeta karichit, dhavan nimilya bhanitre naskale napatariha. O king, followers of this devotional path, having taken shelter of spiritual virtue, Bhagavad Dharma, are never afflicted by misfortune. Even if one runs along with eyes closed, he will never slip or fall from the path. Okay, so he's speaking here to some of the angas that are unfavorable for Rakmark. A lot of them are having some relationship to archan worship, deity worship, which includes different things like elaborate rituals for mantras and mudras, worship of the queens of Dwarka, and so on. So these are considered unfavorable in the Rakmark sadhana, where you're trying to emulate the love of a Brijbasi, basically. So someone may argue, well, if you reject these angas of bhakti, then you are rejecting Shastra Vidhi. So that rejection of Shastra Vidhi will lead to some defect. This same argument is also given by the followers of Varnashram Dharma when they see bhaktas not beholden to the edicts of Varnashram Dharma, right? Nice verses there. Ananushanato dosho bhaktiyankanam prajayate from Srimad Bhagavatam. From Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Srila Rupa Goswami informs us that there is no dosha. He says there is fault if one does not follow the main angas of bhakti. But if one does not follow Varnashram Dharma, there is no fault. Because the rejection of Varnashram Dharma is in view of a higher instruction. such as Sarva Dharma Parityagya Mame Kamshara Nambraja. Right? Krishna says, give up all other dharmas and surrender unto me exclusively. So if you're rejecting Varnashram because of the embrace of that instruction, there is no defect there. Aham tvam sarva papepyo mokshaya yashnami mashutraha. Krishna says that I will liberate you from all sinful reaction. So the sinful reaction here in that verse of Gita means the obstacles to bhakti. Because there could not be any sinful reaction for rejecting Varnashram Dharma if the rejection is based on following that instruction. Krishna himself is told that. So you're not going to get reaction for following that instruction. So when he says, I'll liberate you from all sinful reaction, it is not the sin of rejecting Varnashram Dharma, but sin here means the obstacles to bhakti. I'll liberate you from those obstacles. Do not fear. Mashuja. So similarly, just as there is no fault in rejecting Varnashram Dharma when you have bhakti adhikar, or if you have Gyan adhikar also. Even if you have Gyan adhikar, you can reject Varnashram Dharma and take karma sannyas. Similarly, if you have bhakti adhikar, which is characterized by shraddha, then you are not beholden to Varnashram Dharma. So in the same way, on the path of Rag Marg, you are not beholden to all the edicts that govern Vaidhi Bhakti. Primarily because your motivation is informed by lobha. This is reason number one. And in order for that lobha to mature into sadhya, you have to emulate the Vrishbasis. And therefore, this will require discernment with the application of the angas of bhakti. So if you're rejecting certain angas in consideration of this discerning eye, the discerning lobha eye, if you will, then there is no fault in that. And so this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam is quoted. So if this verse is spoken by Navayogendras to King Nimi. So they're speaking about Bhagavad Dharma or Bhakti. So here, those who have taken shelter of Bhagavad Dharma, Bhakti, there's no misfortune for them. Even if they're running with the eyes closed, they will never slip or fall from the path. So here, this verse, you may recall, Sri Vishwanath is also referenced in the Madhurya Kandamini to describe, I think there also describe the rejection of certain angas of bhakti, not rejection, the neglect of certain angas of bhakti in favor of certain other angas of bhakti. So the idea here is that when you're closing the eyes, you know that these angas exist. Oh, there's this anga for that, there's anga for this in bhakti, but you're closing your eyes to that anga in favor of absorption in the primary angas that are swa abhishta bhava sambandhi. You understand? Remember the Swabhishta Bhava Sambandhi means the Upadankarna, that which is direct cause of you achieving your Swabhishta Bhav, right? So you're in favor of that which is actually going to help me get my point, get my goal. That's what I'm interested in. So you're doing Swabhishta Bhava Sambandhi Sadhana Bhakti. And so you're negligent of some of the other angas that are not Upadan Karna, or maybe not even Nimitta Karna. So there is no fault. You're closing your eyes to that sadhana and you're absorbing yourself in the Bhava Sambandhi sadhana, angas. So here, Naskalen Napatariha, you will not slip or fall from the path because of being informed by, primarily being informed by your lobha and embracing the angas with discernment. In the same way that one who is bhakti adhikar, he's not beholden to the edicts governing varnashram dharma. So he may accept or follow, but he will do with discernment because he's not beholden to that. So this is the idea here, very straightforward and simple. The word yan in the above verse refers to taking shelter of the principal limbs of bhakti, shravan, kirtan, and so on, in which it is not considered a fault to overlook certain other limbs, right? Clear. In Srimad Bhagavatam 11:29-30, Bhagavan Shri Krishna said to Uddhava, Na yangopakrame dhankso madhaktir uddhavanmapi. Shortcomings in one performance of certain limbs of bhakti do not prove detrimental in this devotional path, bhakti dharma, even for one who has just begun to follow it. So this is very similar to Krishna's statement in Gita. What is that verse? oh my God. So, oh my God, 240. Why can't I think of the verse? Now um, it's just on the tip of my tongue. I'm forgetting the word. Nehabi krama nashosti pratibhayo navitite swapam abhyasi dharmasya trayate maratobai. So this verse from Sri Vishwanath's commentary is actually referring to bhakti. So nehabi krama nashosti pratibhayo navitite. There is no loss or diminution on this path of bhakti. Even a little bit of performance of it protects one from the greatest fear. So it's similar. There can be no destruction on the path of bhakti, only degrees of success. Of course, if you reject the main angas of bhakti, there could be no success because you're not doing bhakti really then. So, but the minor angas of bhakti, if you overlook that in favor of the absorption in the main anga, there is no fault there. Okay, in addition, the Brahma Yamala declares, Shruti Shmriti Puranadi Pantaratra Vidamvina, Aikantiki Hare Bhakti Utpatta Yaiva Kalpate. Even though one may be engaged in exclusive devotion to the Lord, if one transgresses the regulations of scriptures, like the Shruti Shmriti Puranas, or the Pantaratra, his bhakti will simply be the cause of disturbance. I think the use of this verse here, he's going to clarify at the end, is to say that it is not that one's bhakti is not at all grounded in scripture. So in other words, yeah, I'm not beholden to scripture and then you do whatever you want. No, that's not the path either. As Sri Vishwanath at least has argued pretty extensively here in this Rava Chandrika and also in his commentaries in BRS, that lobha is not dependent on purification or scriptural edification. But if you have to transform that lobha into the actual sadhya, for that, you're dependent on scriptures. And of course, he says scriptures for the rag marg sadhaka means scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which gives the import of the Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of the relationships with Krishna. So you have dependence on those scriptures and the things that help and transforming lobha into currency, transforming greed into actual money or wealth. So it is not that the rag marg is having no relationship to scriptural edicts. So that person who says, yay, I'm on the rag marg, I don't have to follow any scriptures. So Sri Vishwanath is very much pushing back against that. That so-called pure bhakti, akantiki hare bhakti, the so-called akantiki bhakti, hari bhakti, which is not grounded in Shruti Shmriti Puranadi Pantaratra Vidamina. That bhakti is a disturbance of the social order, Utpatya Yaiva Kalpate. So that was Srila Saraswati Thakur's issue with a lot of the Gaudiya Bhaktas in his time. Now, we don't know the exact history, but we take it for granted that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was not lying to us. And that there really was a social issue going on, a social issue of people who call themselves as rag marg sadhakas, but perhaps felt themselves not beholden to certain shastric edicts, which they really were beholden to, and therefore they created disturbance. So in any case, it is not that rag marg is without being shastrically informed, but the motivation for rag bhakti is not dependent on shastric edicts, unlike the Vaidya sadhaka, where his motivation is dependent on shastric vidhis. So this is the use of this verse here. So there is relationship to Shastra. He's following Shastra also, but he's following Shastra with discernment. Okay, carrying on. When a sadhaka is overcome by devotional greed, he is no longer controlled by the regulations of the scriptures, right? However, if in his bhajan he continues to follow those scriptural instructions that are unfavorable to his own moods, such as meditation on Dwarka and so on, considering them to be compulsory, he will become an associate of the queens of Dwarka upon attaining perfection. The scriptures provide proof for this. He quotes BRS, quote, even if one has a strong desire to enter in the closest amor is how you pronounce that word? Amor, I'm going to say amor. With the Lord, if he performs service in Vidhi Marg only, he will become an associate of the queens of Dwarka. This is a verse composed by Sri Rupa Goswami. And this verse, the word Kevala here, Kevale Naiva. In this verse, the word Kevala indicates that if one is exclusively dedicated to following Vidhi Marg without foregoing worship of the queens of Dwarka or any other limb that is unfavorable to his desired mood, Swa Abhishtavav, he will attain the position of an eternal associate of the Dwarka queens. The Amar Kosh Sanskrit dictionary confirms the definition of the word Kevala as only. So some people, I guess it can happen, someone gets lobha, some type of lobha there, but they feel that I'm gonna follow every anga of Vaidhi Bhakti to the T. I'm not gonna forgo anything. And for whatever reasons, they come to that conclusion somehow or other. So here it says that if you don't reject that which is unfavorable to the desired mood, and he's using the conjugal mellow as the example because he says his explanations were going to be in terms of Kamanuga Bhakti. So using that as the example, he says that then you take birth as a queen in Dwarka. You won't attain Braj if you do not reject the things that are the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti that are unfavorable to your Swabhishtavav mind. So interesting story here in this regard that I read. One Baba there and Braj, he had a desire to do parikram of all the holy places in India. And he was getting ready to leave Braj in order to do this. And he had a dream where Srimati Radhika came to him and told him, don't go to these other places. Just stay here in Braj and do bhajan. But he awoke and he thought that the dream was not a real dream. He thought it's just his imagination, I guess. So he ended up leaving, traveling to all the holy places. And when in Dwarka, he even got branded. So he got some sort of brand in Dwarka. So when he came back to Vrindavan, he had another dream where Srimati Radhika told him that because you have been branded in Dwarka, you are now considered amongst the followers of Satyabhama in Dwarka, and you will attain her goal at the end of this life. So when he awoke, he realized that the first dream was for real. And so in great distress, he went to all the, I guess the enlightened Babas in the area and asked how he can perform penance and rectify the situation. And none of them could come to any conclusion. They were, I don't know, man, you look like you sound like you messed up. And so this Baba in great distress and separation, he just gave up the body. He just burned his body as penance for that mistake. Very far out story. I found I know which biography. This is coming from a book of saints, a book that's a biography of different saints. I'm still looking for like a PDF or even a printed book, but I can't find it yet. In any case, far out story. So anyway, the story is intended to inform the Ragmar Sadhaka that it would be best to reject those things which are unfavorable for your Svabhishtavav mind. Otherwise, you may find yourself in great difficulty. Fascinating story, honestly. Okay, so having said that, he goes into some different arguments people give, and then he rejects that and ends this little statement. So I'm just going to read it. Some propose that by engaging in sadhana and vidhi marg only, one attains the servitorship of the queens of Dwarka, right? So we just heard that. And if one performs sadhana in which vidhi marg is mixed with rag marg, so this is clearly already a speculation. Like there are two different paths, and no, it's something like mixture of them. But if you mix vidhi marg with rag marg, one becomes a maid servant of the queens of Mathura. This must have been some theory that was going around at his time, so he brings it up here. However, such an explanation gives rise to many questions, as it contains no logical reasoning. The first question is this: if becoming a servant of a queen of Dwarka means to become an associate of Rukmini, Satyabhama, and other queens, what does it mean to become an associate of the Mathura queens? It is inconsistent to reply that it means to become an eternal associate of Kuja. From the viewpoint of Rasa, as described in the Rasa Shastras, like Ujjwala Nilamani, the position of Kubja is inferior to that of Rukmini and the other queens, right? Thus, the conclusion would be that the path of mixed rag and vidhi gives a result inferior to that of vidhi alone. So there is not a shadow of doubt that this conception is highly unjustified. Okay. One may present the statement from Gopal Tapani Upanishad, quote, the omnipotent Sri Krishna resides eternally in Mathura Dham with Sri Baladev, Sri Aniruddha, Sri Pradyumna, and Sri Rukmini Devi. So this part here, Sri Rukmini Devi. This would mean that Rukmini was married in Mathura and that Sri Krishna also resides there with her and his other associates. Therefore, attaining the servitorship of the Mathura queens, which is the supposed fruit of Vaidhi Bhakti mixed with Raga, means becoming an associate of Rukmini and Mathura. So this explanation is also illogical because not everyone accepts that Rukmini was married to Mathura. Okay, so why should a sadhaka become the eternal associate of Kubja or Rukmini by worshiping Radha and Krishna? This is a second inconsistency. In Rag Marg, one is inspired by genuine greed and serves according to Vidhi, the regulated path, whereas in Vidhi Marg, one serves being prompted by the words of the scriptures. So again, his point here is that a Rag Marg sadhaka is also serving Vidhi. He's also performing actions informed by Vidhi, but motivated by Rag. That is the difference. And then Vaidhi Bhakti, you're serving Vidhi, but motivated by the Vidhi also. So the previously quoted Shruti Shrinti Purana verse from the Narada Pancharatra provides evidence that serving Sri Krishna without following regulations causes disturbance only. Again, the purpose there is to say that the Rag Sadhaka is not just concocting his own path as he goes along, but he's actually serving scriptural edicts, but motivated by Raga and therefore able to discern which angas can be neglected in favor of other angas. So anyway, a little interesting part. Obviously, this little section reflects a certain concept that he was engaging with during his time. So he brings it up here. I hardly think anyone thinks like this today. Okay, then after this, he went into his detailed explanation of the ways in which one discerns the application of the angas, which we discussed yesterday. Very interesting discussion. And then the Pratama Prakashaha concludes. So I'm going to pause here for a second before we get into the second Prakashaha, the second illumination, where he shifts gears here. So before I'm going to pause, see if there are any questions about this, and I'm also interested to hear what you are hearing from, like, what have you gathered from this whole discussion of the first illumination? If you're hearing anything whatsoever. Okay, Agape has a question first, and then Tamir has a question. Okay. So you, because there's a question, you all have time to like rush through your notes or rush through your brain. What did I hear in the last 2 weeks? And come up with some points. I want to hear something at least, not nothing. Okay, yeah, Agape.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just want to verify something. So my understanding is when you receive a seed from a sadhu, that is the only result that one can attain. Like at least, yeah.
When you receive
a seed of bhakti,
okay,
that's the only result that one can attain. So I guess why I'm bringing this up is if one were to receive a seed from Raganuga or a Ragatmika Bhakta, and say they never pursued greed or they never put themselves in the way of mercy to attain greed, they wouldn't be able to, end up having this end result of being like a queen of Dwarka just because they're attracted to, like if someone was like an Ajato Ruchi, bhakta because they had received a seed from a Ragatmika sadhu, like at the very beginning of their bhakti journey. It's not like because they didn't put themselves in the way of greed, now they can become a queen of Dwarka. Like for someone to become a queen of Dwarka, they would have to receive seed from a Vidi sadhu, correct?
Well, I'm understanding from Sri Rupa's statement and Sri Vishwanath's here is that you got some lobha. So you got some attraction to the conjugal rasa, that bhav. That's the example, of course, that he's using here. So you're attracted to the conjugal rasa, but you don't reject any of the angas of Vaidhi Bhakti because you feel that they're important. So somehow because I also had this doubt or maybe this confusion. Well, aren't they worshiping Radha and Krishna? So why they should get Rukmini? Why should they go to Rukmini or attain a position as an associate of Rukmini? But I guess the point here is that if you have lobha, which means you have an attraction to the conjugal rasa, that example is being used. You can have attraction to any rasa, but you get attraction for that. But you don't reject any of the vidis. Somehow or other that changes the nature of the lobha, I guess, the nature of the greed. Because you're beholden to the edicts. You're making yourself beholden to that edicts. So something about that is shaping your personality, right? Just like when you allow yourself to be beholden to authority. I'm going to use a political example because it just makes it a little clear. You allow yourself to be beholden to authority, whether or not they speak truth or not, but you're just beholden to an authority. It changes the way your personality is shaped, especially as you continue to allow yourself to be beholden to that. And you see it in the political landscape, you see it in ISKCON also, where people just follow the authority without, and if you question the authority, you're considered like some sort of social pariah. This is in the political sphere, it's also in ISKCON. So something happens to your personality when you allow yourself to be so beholden to the other authority. So this is only an intuitive, a sort of intuitive explanation. But you have lobha, so that's the general template that you're attracted to. But by allowing yourself to be beholden to the edicts, I guess something happens to your personality. And so the nature of that attraction gets shaped by that obsequious, I want to say obsequious, maybe that's not the best word. Yeah, that's actually a good word here. The sort of obsequious beholding to these edicts without applying any discernment. And so your personality gets shaped in a certain way that becomes more conducive, or let's say congruent with the mentality of the queens of Dwarka. And so you attain that state. So I can't say more than that. I was also kind of interested because I'm like, well, if they got lobha, which is related to Braj Bhakti, and they're worshiping Radha and Krishna, well, they should get, become an associate of Rukmini. But I guess something happens to the personality by allowing yourself to be under the foot of vidis without any discernment. Just in the same way in the political sphere, people allow themselves to just follow whatever the quote unquote experts say. Whatever the experts say, they allow themselves to be beholden to that. And something happens to their personality. I mean, you can clearly see it, what happens to personalities who are so obsequious to authority that they're not allowed to practically use their discernment. So that's only an intuitive answer. I can't say more than that, but it's actually a good question and an interesting one. This I could do. Tamira has something.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the class. It seems I'm understanding something. And generally devotees will say like these books are very difficult. Yeah, which is difficult, but since you are explaining, you're understanding something. So for this devotee who goes to Dwarka, so does it mean that he meditates on Radha and Krishna, and at the same time he meditates on Rukmini and Satyabhama. Like, is that what it means?
It must mean that, because here it says that that's part of the vidis that he's not rejecting, which includes meditation on Rukmini and so on. So meditation on both is going on. So I guess in that sense, that's also impacting his personality development.
Okay, okay. Yes. And then I just have a hypothetical question. So yesterday I was just discussing with a friend. Just reading this book, and then this question come up. Like, let's say, uh, like you are near some, you are in some place. Like, again, this is hypothetical, that where there is some Gaudiya temple nearby, but uh, and place again means, like, let's say you are in the US, and then there is some Gaudiya temple nearby, but there might be some disturbance going on in the temple. Like, let's say there is some politics or something, or like the devotees like divided into fractions and then criticizing each other. And on the other hand, you found some other temple, let us say a Sri Vaishnava temple, where they have very peaceful atmosphere, and then they are giving a good class and talking about Krishna. So then, yeah, what should one choose in such a situation? Yeah,
Yeah, one should choose whatever is best for the development of their sadhana. So I imagine if someone is a rock mark sadhaka, they're having genuine lobha. They live in some place where devotees are divided, Gaudiya bhaktas are divided into factions, one criticizing the other, very unpeaceful atmosphere. And then nearby also there are Sri Vaishnava temples there. They're doing nice Harikatha, but that Harikatha is, not supportive of their particular Swa-abhishta bhava. So then I imagine this serious devotee who's having a genuine lopa, what he will do is move to Vrindavan. Maybe you give up this Gaudiya Sangha. These devotees are a little bit too neophyte. They're just fighting all the time with each other. That is also not helpful. And at Sri Vaishnava temple, that is also not helpful. So better I give this place up and go to Braj, or some other place at least where there is Swajatiya Sangha available. Why not? People will, for their work, I've seen it so many times amongst devotees. For their work, they will even go to an isolated place to get that almighty dollar, won't they? Oh, this job is giving $200,000 more. Oh, where's the job located? It's in Alaska. But I think it's good. It'll give me time to really learn how to do sadhana. Just me and Krishna. I'm like, please, homie, you want that $200,000 extra? So you're willing to uproot your life for $200,000, which means you value $200,000 a lot in order to uproot your life. But when it comes to your spiritual life, you're not prepared to make any sacrifices for it. Okay, well, probably the loba isn't very deep if there's loba whatsoever. Because if it is very deep, then in the same way that the guy goes for $200,000, he uproots his life and goes to some other location. So we uproot our life and go to the place that is favorable for nourishing our loba. So I would imagine that's the Ragmark Sadhaka would do like this. I shared one quote on the Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya group. Was it yesterday I shared it? Yeah, this one I think. This is from Vrindavan, Mahimamrita. He says, I would rather reside in Vrindavan, even as an insect, than reside in any other place as a liberated soul with a blissful spiritual body. This is actually not the verse I'm thinking of, but I'll read this one anyway because it's very nice. I would rather reside here in Vrindavan, even as a poverty-stricken beggar, than reside in any other place as a person possessing wonderful endless wealth. I would rather reside in Vrindavan, even as a person completely devoid of the slightest trace of devotion to Lord Hari, than reside in any other place as a person overwhelmed with the desire to attain the happiness of serving the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, the lover of the gopis. Yeah, what a statement. Rajvas ki jai. So I would imagine if someone is having true loka, they'll do what's favorable for their bhakti. Staying in a place where Gaudiya Vaishnavas are bickering like that is not favorable, and going to a Sri Vaishnav temple will also not favorable. It's not necessarily unfavorable, but it's not favorable. It's not really favorable to their purpose. So that's my, I guess, intuitive answer to that. I don't know. You have any further thoughts on that? That's what I can say to that.
Yes, I was just thinking, what you said is that if the lobha is strong, and if it is like a little bit strong, then at least you will try to go within US, some place where they got it. That's been good.
Right.
Okay, and also this thing also came up that when we read statement about Raghunath Das Goswami, so do we have to understand that those are the statements about like Prayojan, and first one needs to understand the Sambandha and Abhideya and then read Prayojan, because Raghunath Das Goswami is talking about worshipping Radha, and in those things like he doesn't mention about Krishna. Like in some of the statement, he just worship about like being a servant of Radha and not talking about Krishna at all. But as we say that from the perspective of the Sambandha Gyan, that Krishna is the Advaya Gyan, and like Krishna has three potencies.
The works of Raghunath Das Goswami and other acharyas, prayer books like Sankalpa Kalpadrima, Utkali Kavaladi, and so many works, these, especially like these prayer works, Stavavali, of course, we're talking about, and Stavamala. These works are important, especially for Ragmarg sadhakas who are trying to culture their inner world like a Brijbasi. So luckily, especially for those who are interested in the Tattva Vichatmika Kamanuga Bhakti, these works give amazing insight on the inner world of these types of devotees. And so since your sadhana is basically emulating in your contemplative space, these sorts of persons, then those sorts of books will be important for you for culturing the mentality of such Brijbasis, along with your sadhana, external sadhana of Shrava and Kirtan and Archa and Seva and so on. You study these books to get access to the inner world, so to speak, of these sorts of devotees whose inner world you want to embody. And so these sorts of manuals are important for those persons doing that particular work. And basically that means Ragmarg sadhakas who are really trying to, you can say, give shape, if you will, to their siddhadeha, their inner contemplative form suitable for service to Krishna. So before that, we don't open up with these books because, we need a foundation, we need a ground to stand on. So in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, we talk Sandarbhas and first line cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna Lila mixed with the Naimittika Lilas. And this is spoken all of in the beginning to give us a ground to stand on. And even in Radha Dasyam, that is still Radha Krishna, that is still Krishna consciousness, because in Radha Dasyam, the mentality is how to unite the heroine with the hero, right? The Nayika with the Nayaka. Krishna is the hero, Srimati Radharani is the heroine. And the Prayoja literatures of like Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, for example, is about the mentality of those devotees who are trying to unite the divine couple together. So that is still, they're very much Krishna conscious also, because they know that Krishna gives happiness to their Swamini, Srimati Radhika. So they're very Krishna conscious because of that. But before that, we need a ground to stand on. So we learn. Actually, if you're coming in the beginning, unless you already have some, what was that, praktana, some scars, the previous life, some scars for this sort of subject matter, it will all sound very strange to people. One young boy came yesterday to Thursday night kirtan. He said he was agnostic, but he was completely fascinated by like Vedic philosophy and bhakti. He had even looked up ISKCON online. And he had just like, he was asking me questions at like 100 miles per hour, just like so many questions. I was like, slow down, homie. And so finally, at one point we got to, he was asking about different forms of the Godhead and how do people decide which one to choose. And so we're talking about, Ishtadevata, every tradition. And he was like, well, who's your Ishtadevata? And I said, well, everyone here, we kind of worship, we worship Radha and Krishna, we worship Krishna. He's like, well, what type of Krishna? Like, he was like asking like these sorts of questions. Like, well, it's Krishna, it's the type of Krishna that, you can have a conjugal relationship with. It's like, wait, what? So you're gonna need some ground to stand on before you can really appreciate those sorts of possibilities within consciousness, the chit world or the conscious world. So therefore we say Sandarbhas in the beginning, first 9 cantos in the beginning, like that. But then after you get Lobha, which means there's an intrinsic acceptance of the ultimate reality of these pastime worlds, then this Prayojan books are going to be like your shelter for culture in your inner world. First of all, getting information about the mentalities of these people whose bhavas you're trying to embody, and then culturing your own inner contemplative world in accordance with that spirit. Swavishta bhava. Moy. So yeah, that's how I can answer that. I hope it's all right.
Yes, Prabhu. And then, for example, if someone doesn't have the knowledge of Sambandha and Avideya, so that does it mean that he can become a Shakta, like if he worships Radharani without Krishna?
I don't know who would do that, honestly. Because this person who has gotten the Lobha, Sri Vishnu spent planes here to speak of their relationship with scriptures, not that they have no relationship with it. Scripture means Srimad Bhagavatam. Even if they only studied the 10th canto, they're still going to inquire so much theology around Krishna's Aishwarya, which incidentally is the subject matter of the next illumination in this Ragvartma Chandrika. Even if you would read all in the 10th canto, because the 10th canto is Nitya Lila and Naimitika Lila mixed together. So you're getting a lot of information about the transcendent nature of Krishna. And especially if you're hearing this from a teacher or a guru, you cannot but be aware of that Sambandha Gyan also. That Sambandha Gyan will come to you. So I don't know why they would get the concept of worshiping only Radha without Krishna. Maybe some groups do that, I don't know. But if they're following Shastra, Shruti Puranadi, this verse, then I don't think such a conception would be possible.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Now, if they're rejecting Shastra, that is another thing. Then that is speculation. So that will be Akantikeya Hare Bhakti Upatayava Kalpata. That will become disturbance, at least for our acharyas.
Thank you, Prabhu. And then the last thing, what is that Ajat Ruchi you are talking about?
So we mentioned this in some of the early classes that in the devotees who come in ISKCON, especially, they become aware of like Braj Bhakti, and that's the goal. Many devotees are actually attracted to that ideal. Like especially when you go to Vrindavan, every devotee in Vrindavan, they're into Radha Krishna, Radha Shyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram, they're totally into Vrindavan Bhakti. But they may not really have a genuine Lobha, like they haven't discovered precisely whose bhava they want to embody, because maybe many of them haven't spent or heard sufficiently Krishna Lila. And Krishna Lila means Krishna's Nitya Lila. So they're not clear about all the archetypes, and they're not clear whose bhava they want to embody anything, but they're attracted to the idea of Vrindavan Bhakti. So Sri Jiva Goswami is given some term like this in Bhakti Sandarbha, Ajata Ruchi Raganuga. So the word Ruchi here basically means Lobha. So Ajata Ruchi means the full Lobha hasn't manifest. And Jata Ruchi means the real Lobha has manifest. Now, Jiva Goswami writes, I think this is in 310, Anucheta 310, that real Lobha is characterized by a sort of absorption in bhakti with no interest in any other thing. That's like Lobha proper. So, and we try to make a case for Prabhupada saying, therefore, you have to surpass Anarjana Vritti and, kind of be a little bit purified in order for Lobha to be like Lobha proper. But before that, you may have like Lobha, like you're attracted to the ideal. Maybe depending on the type of devotee from whom your loba has come, you may be I'm attracted to Gopi Bhav. Or I'm attracted to Manjri, but I'm specifically attracted to Rupa's Manjri's Bhav. Like that may be your idea because the sadhu you were hanging out with or hearing from is speaking these things somehow or other. So you really get that attraction and becomes Jayan, but you have so many anarthas and you're neophyte and so much lack of information, like understanding and knowledge. So he said this ajataruchi, you're kind of an ajataruchi, your loba is not really awakened yet in the sense that you have no interest in other things but bhakti. So you have to really support your sort of like budding loba with following the vidis. And then he uses language that you make it one, you make that loba one with the vidis. I forget the exact language used. I have to go and check it out in Bhakti Sundarbha. So this is the term there though. Ajataruchi means loba is not manifested. Jataruchi means loba proper as manifested. So when it's and it's kind of, you could say that we're ajataruchi raganuga sadhakas. That's basically the argument. That we are attracted to the ideal of Krishna Bhakti, Vrindavan Bhakti, Braj Bhakti. We may even be attracted to the general category of bhava, like I'm really into Sakya Bhav or I'm really into Gopi Bhav. But then that's the extent of it. So you still have a lot of dependence on Shastric edicts to, keep you doing bhakti. So this may be termed as Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhaka, like this.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, there's a Vetavali Ramakrishnan. I never.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandut Pranam. This is my first day joining the class and it was, wonderful listening to you. So I have one question. A devotee who reaches Dwarkalok because he was devoted. I mean, he visited the other places that Radharani didn't want him to. So if one reaches a destination like Dwarkalok or some other place, is there still a possibility of him being attracted to Radharani and I mean Krishna, and is there a possibility for him to be elevated to Vrindavan Lok or Goloka?
My general understanding is no. So when you attain the spiritual world, that attainment is forevermore. That is the meaning of attaining the spiritual world. This is true of attaining Sayuja Mukti or Vaikuntha. So it's not like one is shifting, spiritual planets. Like you attain Vaikuntha, you're like, wow, that's really attractive. I think I'll go there now. So the particular attainment is a forever thing.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that, that you get what you want. So that means you got to know what you want, and then you have to follow the path that can get you there. That is just prudence or wisdom. I want to go to New York City because of foolishness. I'm in Chicago. So I've traced out some path that leads to New York City, and then I take that path and I attain New York City. So I want to go somewhere in the spiritual world. I want to go to Golok Vrindavan. Or what's the path that can lead me there? The rock mark. So then you have to follow that. And then you will get what you want.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Another thing, what book are we reading from today? Because I'm not
we're normally studying Bhagavatam, but we've taken a little break from Bhagavatam. We're looking at the Rag Vartma Chandrika of Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Rag Vartma Chandrika means the moon rays that shines light on the path of Raganuga Bhakti, sadhana. So because we are Krishna's bhaktas, we're trying to attain Krishna's realm, Krishna Loka. And the path that leads to Krishna Loka is known as Raganuga Bhakti. So that path is eclipsed in a lot of darkness, so a lot of speculations about it, a lot of taboo around it and so on. So Sri Vishwanath has written a book to shine light on that path. So those who are desirous to go into Krishna Loka can see that path in the darkness of ignorance and the darkness of taboos and all these things surrounding it, and traverse that path nicely and attain Krishna Loka. So he's written this book for this particular purpose. Since that is the purpose of a Gaudiya Vaishnava, I thought it prudent to give it a little read. And I'm also just coming back from Vrindavan, so I was inspired accordingly.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Agapi says, reminds me of Srila Prabhupada's statements at the end of NOD chapter 4. What is that? I know he's talking about the 5 liberations and 4 types are not so antithetical to bhakti.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, the question that was just asked, it reminded me of how one could take what Srila Prabhupada said at the end of that chapter when he was saying that those who attain, Vaikuntha or other sadhyas can become attracted to Radha and Krishna. And I remember bringing this up to you whenever we took the Nectar of Devotion thing, and we looked at the original verses that came from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu,
Right.
and saw that there was maybe a difference of interpretation that a general person would see whenever reading Srila Prabhupada's statements. But ultimately, sadhya, like it doesn't change. If anything, the way I think we qualified it was that someone's sadhya can change before they actually leave their material body, like in the case of Shukadev Goswami.
Sure.
Was one way that we could take those statements.
Sure. Yeah, the other is that Prabhupada wants to make everyone a bridge basi. So you just keep downplaying all the other ideas. Brahmananda is like hell. Of course, that's commonly downplayed by all Gaudiya acharyas. Then they say, what about Vaikuntha Bhakti? No. What about Dwarka? No. What about Braj Bhakti? Yeah. Now you're on the right track. So then some scriptures saying, well, Dwarka is very nice. So then Gaudiya Vaishnava, he'll make some comment. And that way you get discouraged from going that direction. So there's another way to take it. The Gaudiya acharyas, either they're Prapta Siddhas, they have attained perfection, or they're Nitya Siddha. So that means they're into Krishna, and that means their preaching is for Krishna's pleasure. So they see someone going towards the other thing, they say, no, what about Krishna? Just like Rupa and Sanatan. So their brother Anupam, younger brother, he was into Ram Bhakti. So they tried to preach to him, Krishna Bhakti, what is Ram Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti? And they made compelling cases, and Anupam also accepted, what you say is true, but I'm attached to Ram. They're like, all right, we'll leave you alone. Same with Mahaprabhu trying to preach to Murari Gupta. So Murari Gupta is said to be Hanuman Ji in the Ram Lila. So they preached to him, why are you worshiping Ramachandra? You do this, Krishna Bhakti. So Murari Gupta he tried to do it, in one night, give up Ram Bhakti, do Krishna Bhakti. Next morning he said, please permit me to give up my life, because I can't disobey your order also, but I can't follow it also. So just please permit me to just give up my life. And Mahaprabhu said, all right, this is very good. So Gaudiya acharyas will keep pressing the point, Krishna Bhakti, because they're preaching for Krishna's senses. Right? They're interested in satisfying his senses. So if you bring up some other avatar of the Lord, what is this other avatar? But then if you show your bhava is really for the avatar, okay, they'll leave you alone. But if it's like a little weak thing, then you'll give that up, and then you'll go on the path of Krishna Bhakti, and then they will feel very happy. Yeah, we got another one for Krishna's senses. And give a high five to each other. Yeah, good job. So there's another way of saying it. Okay. All right, any other, we'll take it. If anyone has anything they'd like to share what they're getting from you're hearing from this. Bhagavatam Chandrika.
Haribol.
Hi.
There was a verse from BRS mentioned today. it says a person who serves on the path of Vaidhi Bhakti with a desire for conjugal relationship with the Lord in a high position, but without desire for the gopis type of love, after some time becomes queen in Dwarka. So practically, if you just practice Vaidhi Bhakti life after life, eventually you'll just go to Dwarka. And they send you to Dwarka because you don't have like a specific relationship that's developed, that you develop with Krishna.
So it says that you have an attraction to the conjugal mood,
Right.
but you're not interested in the gopi bhava.
Well, it doesn't say you're not interested. It says
What did it say?
it says without desire for the gopis type of love.
Yeah, you don't have desire for the gopis type of love,
Okay.
but you're also attracted to the conjugal rasa. So what other option is there?
Sure. So it's just like a default thing. Okay, you can go over there.
I don't know this default thing, but so Vaidhi Bhakti leads to Vaidha Bhava, and Vaidha Bhava leads to Mahima Gyan Yukta Prema. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Now, what is this Mahima Gyan Yukta? It means the prema where you have awareness of God's Mahima, His glory as God. So the Dwarkas Vasi's love is like that. So they're into Krishna Bhakti. You also into Krishna Bhakti. You don't have desire for the Gopi Bhava. So, and you're following Vaidhi Bhakti. So Vaidhi Bhakti leads to the awareness, leads to love with awareness of God's supremacy. And if you have that combined with the desire for the Gopi, the conjugal mellow, so then that is congruent with the Dwarka mood. So you're gifted, basically you get what you want. Yan yan vapi smaram bhavam ta jante kalevanam tam tami vaitikunteya satrata bhava bhavita. Whatever bhavam you remember when you quit in your body, that state you'll attain without fail. Or what bhava will you remember when you're quitting the body? Sadata bhava bhavita. Well, the one that your mind was always infused in. Tat bhava bhavita. That bhava, tat bhava, that bhavita means like your mind was absorbed in that. Sada, always, at all times, moment to moment. So your sadhana is like that Vaidhi Bhakti with the conjugal spirit, and that leads to the prema with the awareness of God's glory. So the Dwarka, that is what's matching. You got to get a matching suit. You get a matching suit, so that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. I was interested to hear what people are getting from the first illumination taken as a whole. If anyone has anything they'd like to share on that.
I thought there's one day you gave a class or katab, and the topic of discussion was like the Sthai Bhav and Sadhya, and exactly how the details of that are achieved, given that our understanding is that bhakti isn't inherent, or we don't fall from the spiritual world, and how that tied into the Siddha Pranali discussion and everything. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you want to get into some fight with devotees in ISKCON, just bring up the Siddha Deha. You get into some nice fights. Fighting will immediately begin. Actually, in most go to circles, all the fighting actually goes around the Seva Sadaka Rupena, Sadrupena, all the fighting goes on around this one shloka. And calling each other names. Not only ISKCON, you think ISKCON is ghetto, but all the sanghas are like this. Because neophytes are everywhere. Isn't it not like they're all pervasive? Sarvakata. Everywhere you'll find a neophyte. So all this fighting goes on. Oh, Mandri Bhav is the highest thing. You only into Kanta Bhav. You mess. This is actually not bona fide, and they call you names and like this. So the material world is a great fun place for clowns. It is also interesting that the goal is Krishna Prema and not Bhagavan Krishna realization attainment. Yeah, that is also very interesting. Okay, I'll ask the same question next week. So pay attention and try to capture something that you can share with the group where you're getting out of this book. thank you all very much for your participation. We'll stop here for now. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Sri Rag Chandrika ki jai. Go Premanandi.